What is the history of Maester Aemon? What happened in his life before he took the black? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. If you like theories, background, history and lore about A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, this is the place for you. Welcome. This is another collaboration with the wonderful History of Westeros. Please do check out their podcast and YouTube channel. There's a link in the description. Maester Aemon is mentioned in the prologue to Book 1 of A Song of Ice and Fire. In fact, he's one of the first characters named at all. Will looks at Garrod's scarred, frostbitten ear holes where Maester Aemon had their ears cut away. His first actual appearance is not in a Jon chapter, but a Tyrion one. Aemon says that Tyrion is a giant come among us here at the end of the world. And Tyrion was genuinely moved by his sincerity. He also noticed that everyone seems to respect and defer to Maester Aemon, and how incredibly old he is. It's not until Jon's 8th chapter of A Game of Thrones, so near the end of that first book, that Aemon's Targaryen heritage is revealed. It says a lot that his Targaryen ancestry had been largely forgotten by then. We'll come back to that point in this or a later video. Because yes, this is the start of a mini-series on Aemon. He's a great character with a long life and deserves more than one video. Maester Aemon finally died at the age of 102 in A Feast for Crows in a Sam chapter. You may have seen the memes, but yes, he was badass enough to be one of the very, very few to die of old age in A Game of Thrones. His death came at sea, a journey pushed on him largely due to his Targaryen blood. Jon feared that Melisandre would burn him alive. King's blood is powerful, and she has a track record of trying to use it, so to speak. Aemon's destination, that he never reached alive, was where he first began his training to become a maester, the citadel of Oldtown, a life going full circle in a way. Aemon was born in the year 198 to Prince Maekar Targaryen and Lady Diana Dane. He was their third child, preceded by his brothers Aerion, 4 to 6 years older than him, and Daeron, about 8 years older than him. His grandfather, the king, was also a Daeron, second of his name, Daeron II, the Good. His grandmother was Queen Myria of House Martell, giving him Dornish ancestry from both her and from his mother. Thus, neither his parents nor his grandparents practiced the typical Targaryen incest, though his great-grandparents, King Aegon IV the Unworthy and Queen Naerys Targaryen, did. He was named after Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, his famous ancestor killed in action defending the king. Unusually, his parents did not choose his name. King Daeron himself did so. 1 year after Aemon's birth, his sister Daela was born, followed by Aegon another year later and Rhae some time after that. It was Aemon who came up with the nickname Egg for his younger brother. They were always close. As an aside here, Aegon and Aemon were also the names of Daemon Blackfire's firstborn twin sons. They were killed alongside their father at the Battle of the Redgrass Field, a fact surely well known to their namesakes, young princes Aemon and Aegon, as they would often recreate battles of the Blackfire Rebellion using toy figures. Perhaps King Daeron was taking the names Aegon and Aemon back from the Blackfires, so to speak. Prince Aegon would indeed go on to be not just a warrior, but a king. But Aemon, though older than his brother Aegon, was not destined to live the life of a king, battle commander, or even warrior. Though the dragons had been gone for over 4 decades, some traditions die hard. Aemon had a dragon egg placed in his cradle, as did his siblings. He and Aegon would often imagine what it would be like if their eggs hatched, how they'd fly as the first Aegon and his sisters did. Much later, Aemon told Sam Tarly that all his brothers dreamed of dragons, and that all of them died because of it. At some point during Aemon's early life, King Aerys I, perhaps even before he was king, found a prophecy proclaiming that the dragons would return. It seems that younger princes like Aemon and his siblings latched onto this as only children can, only to be disappointed by the lack of dragons arriving. Then, near death, Aemon learned of Daenerys' dragons. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Back to the year 207 or 208, when Aemon was 9 or 10, a couple of years before the events of the Hedge Knight, King Daeron decided Aemon's fate. Noting his bookishness and temperament, and recalling the Blackfire Rebellion, he concluded that too many dragons can be as dangerous as too few, and decreed that Aemon should attend the citadel to become a maester. For context, at this point there were a lot of Targaryens, heading towards 30. A third son of a fourth son sent to the citadel was hardly likely to inherit and might be a nuisance. Still, Prince Maekar, a proud man, was openly displeased that one of his sons was to live a life of servitude. That said, Aemon himself doesn't seem to have argued. Perhaps it's what he wanted. And to be fair, it does seem to be somewhat prescient of King Diran. Aemon was in the future to be offered the Iron Throne, but again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Though Aemon's long age and time, forgotten on the wall, caused people to forget his heritage, it would have been quite the opposite when he first arrived at the Citadel. Instead of eyes gone milky with blindness, they were clearly purple. Instead of hair gone white with age, he had the silvery gold hair, typical of House Targaryen. Even if not for his striking Valyrian appearance, he would not have gone unnoticed as a prince of the realm. There's simply no way to hide who he was. Yes, maesters give up their names as part of their oath, but their family doesn't forget who they are, and they don't forget their families. Nor does everyone else, at least not when it's the most famous family in the realm. The maesterly oath, as well as the Night's Watch oath, are oaths of duty. They forswear their inheritances and names, not their memories. It's not an oath to forget. Aemon may have received special treatment because of his ancestry, or perhaps not, we don't know. We do know that he was an excellent student. He earned links of many metals through merit, not birth. Nevertheless, only a year or two after he arrived at the Citadel, in the year 209, later in that same year as the events of the Hedge Knight, the Great Spring Sickness came. Many people died in Old Town, though Aemon survived. The following year, Duncan Egg came to visit. At the time of writing, we don't have a story about that, but we do know that the three of them went to the Quill and Tankard, the very same establishment where the prologue of A Feast for Crows takes place, to enjoy the fearsomely strong cider they serve. As a parting gift, Aemon gave Egg a mule named Maester, who became his mount for many years. He also measured Dunk, confirming his height at an inch below 7 feet. That's over 2 meters 10 for those metrically minded. We don't know exactly which links Aemon formed in the Citadel, other than silver for healing, gold, lead and tin, but Valyrian steel for the higher mysteries and black iron for Ravencraft also seem likely. John notes many more in one of his POV chapters, but is unable to identify them all. Aemon finished his studies by the age of 19, so perhaps a decade, which seems like a very young age, and was immediately sent to the castle of an unknown minor lord, where he served for about 4 years. During this stint, the Third Blackfire Rebellion took place, and Aemon's brothers Aegon and Aerion were noted for their actions against the rebels. It's unclear whether the Lord Aemon fought for the Black Dragons or the Red. The country was nearly split 50-50, making this a potentially intriguing and unknown period in Aemon's early life. In fact, it is our first option for the first of Aemon's famous 3 tests, as he relates to Jon, where he was tempted to break his oaths. The first temptation must have come after he forged his chain, or else he would not have an oath to break. If the lord he served rose for the Black Dragon, it would certainly test his vows. So would falling in love. It is Aemon who tells Jon that love is the death of duty, and he seems to have been speaking from experience. Aemon says that 3 times the gods saw fit to test my vows, once when I was a boy, once in the fullness of my manhood, and once when I had grown old. The third is to do with Daenerys, which we will come on to in a later video, but this first time, we don't know. Perhaps it was the Blackfire Rebellion, but more likely, love. Who did Aemon fall in love with? Whoever it was, his older self thought himself a boy at the time, which perhaps he was, aged 20 or so, from the perspective of a very old Aemon. Jumping forward a few years, in the year 221 AC, King Aerys I died without issue, and Aemon's father Maekar ascended to the throne. He summoned Aemon and his 3 brothers to court. It was an unexpected elevation for Maekar, who was a 4th son, so very unlikely to succeed to the throne. He offered Aemon a place on the small council, but Aemon refused, not wanting to upset the hierarchy of the Citadel by usurping some of the Grand Maester's power. Instead, he became the Maester for his brother Diran, the Drunken, who became Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the throne with Maekar's ascension. That's an alternate future ripe with possibilities. Aemon's tenure there seems to have begun on a high note, the birth of a new princess. Diran had married Kira of Tyrosh, who had once been married to Prince Valar Targaryen before he died during the Great Spring Sickness. Yes, this is another of those weird Targaryen intermarriage things. In 222, The year after he took up residence, Maester Aemon delivered their daughter Vaela. But things took a downward turn from there. Vaela proved to be simple-minded, according to the Maesters in the World of Ice and Fire, and the couple would not have another child. Perhaps Vaela was a dragon dreamer. Perhaps one day we will find out. To make matters worse, Diron continued to be tormented by dragon dreams. His dreams were apparently far more vivid, frequent, and disturbing than those of his siblings, and perhaps as haunting as any Targaryen dreamer we know of. This is why he was called Diron the Drunken, because he self-medicated with alcohol to keep the dreams at bay. Perhaps Aemon tried to sway him away from drink towards other remedies, but it was all to no avail as far as we know. We're told that Diron died of the pox, contracted via a sex worker. Perhaps, but I remain to be convinced. Diron's death made Aerion the heir, given that no one would countenance Princess Vaela on the throne. Still, Aerion? A constant silver lining amidst these developments was probably Aemon's unparalleled access to House Targaryen's ancient texts kept at Dragonstone. Even the Citadel would have lacked some of the tomes that were surely there. Some may even have survived from old Valyria itself. A few years later, the Citadel was struck by plague yet again, the second time in less than 20 years. This time it was called the Grey Death, and claimed half the city and 2/3 of the Citadel. Aemon would have again lost colleagues and friends, and the number of people who remembered who he was, not just a maester, began to dwindle. Aemon seems to have remained on Dragonstone after his brother's death, and as far as we know, Aerion never actually took up residence there. He apparently preferred court or summer hall, but we're not sure. So perhaps Aemon had the run of the island and its library for several years. In 232, Aerion and his wife Lady Daenora Targaryen had a child they named Maegor, a choice of name that unnerved many, remembering Maegor the Cruel. But later that year, Aerion Brightflame drank wildfire, telling his friends it would transform him into a dragon. But as Lord Commander Mormont put it, the gods were kind, and it transformed him into a corpse. Many celebrated his death, giving thanks that he would never ascend the Iron Throne. All of which left a bit of a succession crisis. The list of Targaryen heirs who died during that time is lengthy, and King Maekar himself was killed during the Peak Uprising the following year. Bloodraven called the Great Council of 233, and the realm debated who to crown. Aerion's infant child Maegor was deemed unfit, and his brother Aegon's reputation as half a peasant heavily weighed against him. Quietly, several lords offered Aemon the crown, pointing out that his maester's vows could be dissolved. Aemon declined and would not be persuaded otherwise. This is very likely the second of the 3 temptations he related to Jon Snow, the one where he was a full-grown man. He would have been in his mid-30s at the time. Other than Egg, the only other known viable candidate for the throne was Aenys, 5th son of Daemon Blackfyre. Bloodraven promised him safe passage to the Red Keep in order to make his case to the council, but he lied. Aenys was executed, and his head was presented to the council instead of his claim. Thus, though they had serious doubts, the council was left with no choice but to name Aemon's brother Aegon their new king. He became Aegon V, called the Fortunate and the Unlikely. His first notable act as king was to have the hand of the king he inherited, Bloodraven, thrown into prison for breaking the word of the Iron Throne. The new King Aegon V was undisputed ruler, but he had lost the protection of Bloodraven and had the suspicion of many of the lords of Westeros. Many clearly felt that Aemon would have been the better king. At which point we should return to that childhood bond between Aemon and Egg. Aemon seemingly didn't want to be the Targaryen that Egg's enemies tried to rally behind. As a maester, he would always be somewhere in the Seven Kingdoms and visible, but at the Wall, that's where people were sent to be forgotten. Aemon sacrificed comfort, family, and so much else for the realm, for duty. The day he left to take ship for the Wall, he told his brother to kill the boy within, to let the man be born. Egg had to die for Aegon to be born. It's the same advice he later gives Jon when he is elected Lord Commander. Both Egg and Jon Snow seem to have listened. Aemon's cousin Bloodraven took the black as well, along with 50 Raven's Teeth, his most loyal guards. Aemon and Brynden were escorted by none other than Sir Duncan the Tall all the way to Eastwatch by the Sea by the ship Golden Dragon. As Aemon said to Sam, No recruit had arrived at the wall with so much pomp since Nymeria sent the watch 6 kings in golden fetters. It was the year 236. John and Sam joined 52 years later. Were there other reasons why Aemon went to the wall? We'll look at that in another video, but it is indisputable that Bloodraven and Maester Aemon found themselves, perhaps unexpectedly to Aemon, serving together at the wall. 2 Targaryens obsessed with prophecy and magically inclined in their own ways. All of that will come in the second part of this series of videos. If you'd like to see more A Song of Ice and Fire videos, please click on the link on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support the channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.